Hello, it's Mr. Kablan here, and I'm here to present to you with just a review and get ready for the course here. Before we begin, just make sure you have something to write with to fill in the notes in your package there, as well as your calculator, because there are going to be some keys I'm going to introduce you to as we're going through this lesson. Now, when it comes to the calculator, I'm going to see just in a moment. When you're looking at the calculator, everybody's calculator is different. But with that said, ultimately, most calculators are relatively the same. So when you're going through these lessons over here, okay, if you're not too sure where the keys are, just let me know, and then perhaps I could uh, provide assistance for you for your specific calculator. So what you can see here with calculator, just to introduce you to some keys here, this ABC key here, which most calculators do have, this is the fraction key. And we're going to use that to take a look at how we can use that key there to take fractions and to put them into what is called lowest terms. Okay, so I'm going to tell you when to use that. Now, these here are the brackets, and brackets are used for things like order of operations or BEDMAS, but we're also going to see in one of the examples today that we're also going to use that when performing substitution, where we replace numbers into letters here. So this next thing here, this is the integer key. And all it does here is it takes numbers and changes it to a negative number. So for example, if I want to put in -3, I would just press that and press 3. And that would make the number automatically negative. Now, please do not confuse that key there with the subtraction key, which is on the far right-hand side there. So just to let you know, again, those two keys are completely different. All right, let's take a look at the lesson here. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to be dealing with fractions and how to change fractions into lowest terms and as a decimal. And the way I like to approach this, again, is to use what are called common factors. And what a common factor is a number that goes evenly into both the top number, which is the numerator, and the bottom number, which is called the denominator. So for the first one here, what we have here is 5 and 20. So when you're looking at numbers of here, always go through the numbers that go evenly to each. And you can see here, if you're looking at 5 and 20, okay, 5 goes into both 5 and 20. And what we're going to do here is take each number and then divide it by the common factor. So for example, what we have here is 5. So I'm going to take that 5 and divide it by 5 here. So that gives me 1. Okay, and the 20 over here, we're going to divide that by 5, and that gives me 4. So what we'll have here is 5 over 20, which is going to be reduced to 1 over 4. Now, a couple seconds ago, I introduced you to the fraction key in your calculator. So what I want you to try right now is to punch in 5. Okay, press that fraction key, which is that ABC key that I introduced you to a minute ago. Okay, and then press 20. Now, once you press 5, fraction key 20, press equals, and you will automatically get 1 over 4. Okay, so these steps will become factor. Again, I'm just showing it to you just, in the event that, again, if you don't have a calculator, it is an option that you have there. However, if you have the fraction key, you can use it to reduce terms here. Okay, and then to change it to decimal, we just need to take the top number and then divide it by the bottom number. So when I go 1 divided by 4, that's going to give me 0.25. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for 12 and 32. So the common factor for that is going to be 4. So we're going to divide both numbers by 4 here. So 12 divided by 4, that gives me 3. And 32 divided by 4, that gives me 8. So 12 over 32 is going to be reduced to 3 over 8. Okay. So the next thing that we have here is we're going to take the 3 and the 8 and divide them to each other. So that gives me 0.375. Okay, and for the next part here, we're going to take the -18 and the 24, and we're going to divide it here by 6. Okay, because 6 goes into both -18 and 24. So just like we did in the previous example here, we're going to take -18 divided by 6, gives me -3. And we're going to take the 24 divided by 6, and that gives me 4. So that's going to give me a reduced fraction there of -3 over 4 here. Okay, and then when I take the -3 and divide it by 4, that's going to reduce to -0.75, okay, as a decimal. Okay, so that's changing fractions to lowest terms and then changing it into decimal. Okay, so again, if you have the fraction key, okay, it makes things a lot easier for you. All right. Okay, so the next thing, next set of examples here, we're just going to do a quick review of integers. So what you have here again are just different operations of integers. And what we actually want to revisit in these ones here are the rules of integers. So for example, for this first one here, what I have is 5 plus -3. Now, anytime you see two signs that are grouped side by side like this, what you have to do here is to change it to the proper integer, which changes it to the next operation here. So for example, notice I have plus and minus over here side by side. So anytime you have a positive and a negative, okay, or a plus or a minus to make it nice and quick, okay, that automatically changes to a negative. So that was just a rule of integers. So anytime you see a combination of a positive and negative or a negative and a positive, okay, don't forget to change it to a minus sign. So that now becomes 5 minus 3, which becomes 2. Now for part B over here, I want you now to use that integer key, which I introduced you a few minutes ago, with that plus minus key. So press that key and then press 7. Now you notice when you do that in your calculator, it automatically changes it to -7. Okay, then from there, you add 5 by pressing plus 5, and that -7 plus 5 is going to give me -2 there. All right, and last but not least here, anytime you see two negatives side by side, okay, that when you have two negatives, that changes to a positive, which then changes this operation to addition in this case. So what we have here will be 4 plus 9, which gives me 13. Okay, so those are the rules of integers there. So what we're going to do in the next set of examples is we're now going to combine fractions and integers. So for this next part over here, all we're going to do here is take a look at each problem and then evaluate them step by step. So for part A here, what I have here is 4 plus 3 on the top and then 20 minus 6 on the bottom. So the way we're going to do this is just we're going to evaluate the top and the bottom separately, and then from there, see what we need to do. So for the first question here, 4 plus 3 is 7, and then 20 minus 6 is 14. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're now going to take that fraction and then reduce it into lowest terms. So the way we do that is we're going to common factor it. If you have a fraction key, you can also do that as well. Okay, but what we're going to do here is for the people without a calculator is to use common factors. Okay, and a common factor of 7 and 14 is 7. Okay, because 7 goes into both 7 and 14. Okay, so what we have here is 7 divided by 7, which gives me 1, and then 14 divided by 7, which gives me 2. So 7 over 14 as a reduced fraction is going to become 1 over 2. Okay, so for part B over here, we have 12 plus -3 in the top and then 13 minus -2 in the bottom. So for the top part, we're just going to clean this up first. So remember, anytime you have a combination of a positive and negative, that always changes to a negative, which changes that to subtraction. Okay, and then when we have two negatives, that changes itself to a positive, which then becomes addition. So I'm just going to rewrite that in the next line here just to clean things up as 12 minus 3 and 13 plus 2. Okay, so 12 minus 3, that gives me 9, and then 13 plus 2 gives me 15. Okay, so for the next part over here, what we're going to do now is to take 9 and 15 and find a common factor for that. Okay, so a number that goes evenly into both 9 and 15 is going to be 3. Okay, so what we have there is that we're going to take the 9 divided by 3, that gives me 3. And we're going to take 15, divide that by 3, and that gives me 5. Okay, so from there, that's going to give us 3 over 5 as a fraction in lowest terms. All right, so again, that's just an example of putting the last two concepts together. So what we're now going to do in this one here is we're going to look at algebra, which is going to be the foundation of this course here. And we're actually going to spend a lot more time on it in chapter 4. But what we're going to do for this one here is just go over the basics. Now, notice that all three questions that on the screen there all have something in common. Okay, notice they all have the letter X. So we're going to be performing what's called isolation of the variable. So what we want to do here in each case here is just to leave the letter alone. Okay, so for part A here, you notice what we have here is the letter X and a number with an addition sign. So anytime you see a letter and a number and the two terms or the two parts are separated by either a plus or a minus sign, okay, all we're going to do there is move the number. So for the first example here, if you take a look at x plus 1 equals 5, notice what we have here is we're going to take the 1 and we're going to move it to the other side. Now, anytime a number moves the other side, it changes to the opposite symbol here. So what we have here is a +1. So when it goes to the other side, it becomes a -1. So 5 minus 1, that will give me 4. Now, for part B over here, you notice that what we have here is a number and a letter that happens to be grouped together. Now, the -6 in this case is grouped together to the letter x by multiplication. So we have to perform the opposite operation of that, which is division. So what we're going to do for this one here is we're going to divide both sides by what is called the coefficient, which is simply just the number in front of the letter, okay, when including the negative symbol here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to divide both sides here by -6. Okay, and the reason for that is because when we divide both sides by the number that's attached to the letter x, okay, that's going to cancel out the -6's on the left side there. And then 18 divided by -6, that's going to give me -3. All right, for this next example, you might want to put a star beside this one, is that when you see a fraction here, keep in mind that anytime you see a fraction, okay, the operation between the top and the bottom number is always division. And in this case, what we have here is a letter over 2 here. So think of this as x divided by 2. Now the opposite of operation of division is multiplication. So what we're going to do for this example is we're going to multiply both sides by the bottom number or the denominator. And you do this for any fraction. So whatever number is that's part of the bottom of the fraction, you're going to multiply both sides by that number. So in this case here, we're going to multiply both sides here by 2. And the reason for that, and if you take a look at the left side here, is that when we multiply both sides by the bottom number, the two 2's in this example are going to cancel out. And on the right side, 2 times 8, that gives me 16. Okay, so you can see that in this example here, okay, what we're doing here again is just is performing opposite of operations. Okay, now we're going to spend a lot of details on this in chapter 4, but I just want to get you familiar with the basics. All right, the last example we're going to deal with here is substituting variables. And like I said, this is a perfect opportunity for you to familiarize yourself with your calculator here. So for this next part over here, all we're going to do here is replace the 5 for whatever the x is. So if you look at the first example here, what I have here is y equals 3x minus 7. So all I'm going to do in the next example here is I'm going to replace that x with a 5, but the part I want you to pay attention to is what I do with that 5. When that 5 replaces the x, okay, you're going to see that I simply just put a brackets around the 5 there, okay? Now, in your calculator, if you put in 3, okay, open up a set of brackets, punch in 5, and then close the brackets, okay, and then subtract 7, you will actually get the answer in one step, which in this case here will be 8. Okay, now what your calculator is really doing here is going 3 times 5, which is 15, and then 15 minus 7 gives you 8. But with the brackets, your calculator knows how to perform opposite order of operations. Okay, so that's where the brackets come in handy. Same thing with part B. Okay, notice what we have here is negative 2x plus 7. So all I'm going to do here is to take this x and then replace it with a 5 with the brackets around it. Okay, so in this case here, what we have here is negative 2, and in brackets 5, and then plus 7. And if you do this correctly in your calculator, you will get an answer here of negative 3. Now, what's really happening here is negative 2 times 5, which gives me negative 10. Okay, and then plus 7, that's going to give me negative 10 plus 7, which gives me negative 3. All right, so that's pretty much it. Okay, so that wraps up the introduction to this course. So if you turn to your package there, you will see what you have there again are a set of questions for you to work on. Okay, so work on that, and I will see you in the next lesson.